The night was heavy and still, the kind of night where even the wind seemed afraid to move. The alien mother clutched her small daughter's hand as they hurried through the forest path. Her heart pounded with every step, not from the run, but from the fear that someone was following them. She could feel eyes in the dark. Her daughter whispered, "Mama, I'm scared." Her voice trembled and her small legs struggled to keep up. The mother forced a smile, though her chest burned with dread. "Don't worry, little one, I'm here." She pulled her close and tried to shield her from the shadows. But shadows don't listen and hunters don't wait. A sharp whistle cut the silence, then, thud. The mother gasped. Her body jerked as an arrow ripped through her side. She staggered forward, blood hot and wet beneath her clothes. She looked down at her daughter's wide eyes filled with horror. The child screamed, "Mama!" Without thinking, the mother pushed her daughter behind her. Her knees buckled, but she stayed upright, protecting the child with her own body. Another arrow hissed past, slicing through the night. She clutched her wound, breathing hard. Voices came from the trees, cruel and mocking. "There they are." The weak one and her brat, laughter followed. The hunters stepped out of the darkness, their weapons drawn. The mother's vision blurred. Her strength was leaving fast. She pressed the girl's head against her chest, whispering, "Run when I fall." "You must run." But the daughter clung tighter, sobbing. "I won't leave you." The hunters closed in, steps heavy, faces twisted in cruel delight. They raised their bows again, ready to end it, and then another sound. One that didn't belong. A sharp crack broke through the night, followed by a thud of one hunter collapsing. The rest froze, confused from the edge of the shadows. A figure stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, carrying something long in his hands. His eyes were sharp and his face grim. A human. The hunters hissed in anger. "Stay out of this, human. She's not your kind," but the man didn't answer. He aimed his strange earth weapon again and another hunter fell. The forest echoed with silence and then chaos. The remaining hunters retreated into the trees, leaving behind curses that faded into the dark. The mother swayed, her body weak. Her daughter tried to hold her up, crying, "Please help, Mama." "Please." The human knelt beside them, his voice calm but firm. "Hold still. You're bleeding badly." He tore a piece of cloth from his own shirt and pressed it against the wound. The mother winced but did not cry out. She looked at him through half-closed eyes. Why help us?" Her voice was thin, barely more than a whisper. The man didn't look at her. His hands worked steady. "Because no one else will." The daughter grabbed his arm, her small fingers desperate. "Don't let her die." Her words were broken by sobs. Her tears stained the dirt. The human lifted the mother carefully into his arms. She was light, far too light for someone her size. Her strength had been drained by hunger, by fear, by pain. He looked down at the little girl. "Stay close." "Don't let go of my shirt." The girl nodded quickly. Wiping her face with her sleeve, she clung to him as they moved. The forest stretched dark and endless, every sound a threat. The human's steps were careful but fast. He carried the mother as if she weighed nothing, his jaw tight, his eyes searching for danger. The mother tried to speak, but her voice failed her. Only one thought burned in her heart. This stranger, this human, had saved them when no one else would. She wanted to thank him, but the words never came. Darkness pulled her under. The girl panicked. "Mama, wake up." "Mama." She shook her gently, tears streaming down. The human looked at the girl and said quietly, "She'll live if we move fast." Through the forest. He carried them. The hunters might return. The night was still long. But for the first time, the little girl felt hope. Hope carried in the arms of a man who owed them nothing. Behind them, the moonlight shone on the broken arrow lying in the dirt. The night had started with blood and fear. But something new had entered the story. Something neither mother nor daughter could understand yet. The human was not their kind, but he had made a choice. And that choice had just changed everything. The night was still heavy with danger when the human reached a small clearing. He laid the alien mother gently on the ground. Her breathing was shallow, her face pale. The child knelt beside her, gripping her mother's hand tightly. The man checked the wound. His hands were steady, though his jaw was tense. The arrow had cut deep. Blood still leaked from it. He knew if he didn't act soon, she wouldn't last the night. He tore more cloth from his shirt, wrapping it around her side. Pressing hard to stop the bleeding, the little girl looked up at him with wide eyes. "Please save her," she whispered. Her voice was hoarse from crying. He didn't answer right away. He had no medicine, no proper tools, only his strength and what little knowledge he carried from Earth. But walking away wasn't in him, not tonight, not after seeing her take an arrow meant for her daughter. Finally, he looked at the child, his eyes firm. "I'll do what I can, but we must move." "This place isn't safe," the girl nodded quickly, trusting him without question. He lifted the mother into his arms again, careful not to shift her wound too much. The girl trotted beside him, holding onto his sleeve as though letting go would mean losing everything. As they moved deeper into the forest, questions burned in his mind. Why had he done this? Why risk his life for strangers, aliens no less? He knew the hunters weren't done. They would regroup, track him, maybe even punish him later. But something about the way the mother had shielded her daughter had struck him. It reminded him of a memory he tried to bury long ago. A memory of another night, another scream, another life he couldn't save. He pushed the thought away, focusing on the path. Hours passed. The forest grew colder and the child shivered. He pulled off his jacket and draped it around her small shoulders. She clung to it, eyes filled with gratitude. "You're kind," she said softly. "But why help us?" "The others never do." The human kept walking. "Because you deserve a chance to live." His words were simple, but they carried a weight the girl didn't fully understand. At last he reached an old wooden cabin hidden between trees. Its roof sagged, its walls patched, but it was shelter. He pushed the door open with his boot and stepped inside. The place smelled of dust and smoke. A small fire pit lay in the center. He set the mother down carefully on a bed of old blankets, then turned to the girl. "Bring me water from that pot." She rushed to do as he said, handing him the cracked jug. He cleaned the wound as best as he could, washing away the blood. He crushed some herbs from a pouch he carried, spreading them across the injury. They weren't perfect, but they might stop the infection. The mother stirred, her eyes fluttering open for a moment. She looked at him weakly. Why save me?" He met her gaze, his voice low. "Because your daughter needs you." Her eyes filled with tears. She tried to speak again, but her strength failed her. She slipped back into unconsciousness. The girl leaned against him, tears rolling down her cheeks. "She'll live, right? Tell me she'll live." The human placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "I'll do everything I can." That night, he kept the fire burning, checking her wound again and again. The little girl sat close, refusing to sleep. Every time her mother groaned, she reached for her hand, and still outside. The forest wasn't quiet in the distance. Voices echoed faintly. The hunters, searching. Their words carried threats, promises of pain for anyone who interfered. The human's eyes narrowed. He loaded his weapon, set traps around the cabin. He knew they would come. Maybe not tonight, but soon. He glanced at the mother, then at the girl. She had fallen asleep against the wall, clutching her mother's shawl, her small face still streaked with tears. And there, in the glow of the fire, he made his choice. He could walk away in the morning, leave them behind, pretend none of this had happened. That was the easy road, the safe road. But deep in his chest, a voice whispered, "Not this time." He wasn't going to abandon them, not like before. When dawn touched the forest with pale light, the girl stirred. Her eyes opened, and she found him still awake, sitting guard by the door. His weapon rested on his lap, his gaze sharp. "You didn't sleep," she said softly. He shook his head. "Didn't need to. Someone has to watch over you." The girl blinked, as if she couldn't understand why a stranger would care so much. "What's your name?" she asked. He hesitated for a moment, then answered. "Daniel," she repeated it, her voice small but steady. "Thank you." Daniel, and in that moment the choice was sealed. He wasn't just passing through anymore. He had tied himself to their fate. Hunters or no hunters, punishment or no punishment. He had made his stand. He was going to protect them. The cabin was silent except for the soft crackle of fire. Smoke curled upward, painting shadows on the old wooden beams. Daniel sat cross-legged on the floor, watching the flames dance. His weapon lay across his lap, ready. His ears stayed sharp for every sound outside, but his eyes often drifted back to the woman lying weakly on the blanket. Her breathing was shallow but steady now. The bleeding had slowed thanks to the herbs and tight bandages he had wrapped. Yet her skin still looked pale, sweat dampened her forehead. She needed more than his crude efforts. She needed real healing. But that wasn't possible here, not now. The little girl stirred awake, rubbing her eyes. She glanced at her mother, then at Daniel. "She's still alive," the girl whispered. As if saying it louder would break the fragile miracle, Daniel nodded. "Yes, she's fighting. but we need to help her fight harder. The girl crawled closer, her small hands trembling. How? Daniel reached into a leather pouch he carried, pulling out dried leaves, bark, and a few small pieces of bitter root. These are medicines I've gathered from the forest. Some heal wounds, some fight fever. They're not perfect, but they're better than nothing. He set a small pot over the fire, filling it with water from the jug. The girl watched with wide eyes as he crushed the herbs and dropped them in. The air filled with a strong, bitter smell. What are you making? She asked. A healing drink, he replied. It won't taste good, but it will give her strength. The girl nodded quickly, desperate for anything that could save her mother. When the brew was ready, Daniel lifted the woman slightly, holding the cup to her lips. Drink, he whispered. At first she didn't respond, too weak to move. But when he touched the cup to her lips, she parted them just enough. The warm liquid slipped into her mouth. Her throat worked slowly, painfully, but she swallowed. The girl's eyes lit with hope. She drank it, she said softly. She's going to get better. Daniel placed the cup aside and eased the mother back down. It will help her, but it will take time. He looked at the girl. What's your name? She hesitated, then answered. Lyra. Lyra, he repeated. Stay close to her, talk to her, even if she doesn't answer. It helps the mind fight when the body is weak. Lyra nodded and leaned against her mother, whispering softly, Mama, please come back to me. Daniel leaned back against the wall, but his body stayed tense. Outside, he heard the forest stir. A distant howl echoed, followed by the faint sound of snapping branches. The hunters were still searching. He didn't doubt they would find this place eventually. Hours passed. The fire grew low, so Daniel added more wood. The light flickered across the cabin walls. Lyra dozed against her mother, her small hand wrapped around her mother's wrist. Daniel watched them quietly, his mind heavy with memories. He remembered another time, another family, a night when he had failed to save someone dear. That pain had haunted him, carving scars inside his soul. But tonight felt different. Tonight he had chosen to act. And maybe, just maybe, he could make things right. The mother stirred suddenly. Her eyes fluttered open, her lips moving faintly. Daniel leaned closer. You're safe, Rest. You're not alone anymore. Her gaze found him, weak but steady. For a moment she looked as if she didn't believe what she saw. A human guarding her, protecting her. She tried to speak but only managed a hoarse whisper. Why? Daniel's answer was simple but carried weight. Because I couldn't walk away. Her lips trembled as if she wanted to say more, but exhaustion dragged her back into sleep. Later that night, the sound of footsteps outside snapped Daniel awake fully. He pressed a finger to his lips, signaling Lyra to stay quiet. She froze, holding her breath. Daniel moved silently to the door. His weapon in hand, through a crack, he saw shadows moving between the trees. Two figures with bows, their voices low but cruel. The trail ends here, one muttered. Check the cabin. Daniel's grip tightened. He could fight, but not with Lyra and her mother inside. A direct battle would put them at risk. He needed something else, something clever. He stepped back from the door, pulling out a pouch of dried powder. He sprinkled it across the floor near the entrance. Then he lit a small stick, letting smoke fill the room. It wasn't fire. It was earth powder he had mixed to confuse scent and sight. The door creaked as the hunters pushed it open. Peering inside, the smoke made them cough, their eyes watering. What is this? One hissed, stumbling back. Daniel appeared from the shadows, his weapon aimed, his voice cold. Leave, they froze, caught off guard. For a moment, no one moved. Then one spat on the ground. This isn't over. Human. They retreated into the trees, fading into the night. Daniel shut the door and reinforced it with a wooden beam. His heart pounded, but his face stayed calm. He turned to see Lyra staring at him in awe. You scared them, she whispered, almost smiling through her fear. Daniel knelt beside her, lowering his voice. They'll be back stronger, but we'll be ready. The girl leaned closer to her mother, whispering again, Hear that, Mama? We're safe for now. The fire crackled softly. The cabin smelled of smoke and herbs. The night wasn't over. Danger wasn't gone. But something had changed inside that small shelter. For the first time, the alien mother wasn't just surviving, she was being protected. And for the first time, Daniel wasn't running from his past, he was facing it. The healing fire burned on, carrying warmth, hope, and the fragile promise of tomorrow. The morning sun slipped weakly through the cracks of the old cabin, but peace was short-lived. Daniel had slept little, his weapon always close. He checked the bandages on the alien mother. Her breathing stronger now, though she was still pale. The bitter smell of herbs lingered in the air, mixed with smoke from the dying fire. Lyra, the little girl, stirred and rubbed her eyes. She looked first at her mother, then at Daniel. "She's better, right?" she asked with hope trembling in her voice. Daniel gave a slow nod. "Better, but not safe yet. The hunters won't stop, they'll come." Lyra's face fell. She hugged her mother tightly, as if her small arms could shield her from the world. Daniel stood and moved to the window slit, scanning the trees. His instincts told him the forest was no longer theirs. It belonged to the ones searching for blood by noon. The sound of crows circling high above brought his fears closer. Hunters were near. Their presence was like a poison in the air. Pressing down on the cabin walls, a sharp whistle carried through the forest, followed by voices. "Spread out." "The human hides here," Lyra gasped, clutching her mother's hand. The woman stirred weakly at the sound. Her eyes half open, she whispered, They found us." Daniel knelt beside her, his face calm, though his heart pounded. "I'll hold them off," but her hand caught his wrist. Her grip weak yet fierce. "Take her, take my daughter. Leave me." Daniel shook his head firmly. "Not an option, you both live." His voice was steel. Leaving no room for argument, he rose, grabbed a sack from the corner, and began pulling out strange earth items. Wires, sharpened stakes, small jars of powder. Lyra watched with wide eyes. "What are you doing?" "Setting traps," he answered. "We'll make the forest fight for us." Together, they worked quickly, Daniel guiding Lyra on where to place things. They stretched wires between trees, dug small pits, sprinkled powder that would flash into smoke when disturbed. The girl's fear slowly shifted to determination. She wanted to help, and he let her. When they returned to the cabin, the forest had grown too quiet. The kind of quiet that screamed danger suddenly. The first arrow struck the cabin wall. Splinters flew. Lyra shrieked. Daniel pulled her down and moved her mother behind a stack of crates. "Stay low, don't move," he whispered. Dark figures emerged from the trees. Bows drawn, spears glinting. Their leader stepped forward, scar across his face. "Human, this is not your fight. Hand them over, and we will let you live." Daniel stepped outside slowly, his weapon in hand. His voice was calm, but his stance was unshakable. "You'll have to kill me first," the scarred hunter sneered. "So be it." He raised his hand and the hunters advanced. The first one sprinted toward the cabin, but his foot caught a hidden wire, a sharp snap, and a wooden spike swung down from above, driving him into the ground. His scream cut through the silence. Chaos followed. Another rushed forward but stumbled into a pit Daniel had dug, snapping his leg with a sickening crack. Smoke burst from a powder jar, blinding two more as they coughed and cursed. Lyra peeked through the cracks, her eyes wide with both fear and awe. He's winning," she whispered. But Daniel knew it wasn't enough. For everyone, trap sprung. More hunters appeared from the trees. Circling like wolves, their leader's voice rang out. Furious, "Surround him, leave the human broken, and drag the others out." Arrows hissed through the air. Daniel ducked behind a tree, returning fire. One hunter fell. Another staggered back with a wound. Yet they kept pressing, their numbers too many inside. The mother forced herself upright, pain shooting through her body. Her strength was nearly gone, but she could not lie still while the man risked everything. She grabbed a loose board from the floor, clutching it like a weapon. Her voice, weak but sharp, cut through the cabin. "Lyra, stay down." Daniel fought like a storm, moving between trees, using every trick he had. His mind worked faster than theirs, his steps lighter, but exhaustion was close. Sweat dripped from his brow, his breaths came heavy. He knew he couldn't hold forever. Then in the chaos, one hunter slipped past the traps and reached the cabin door. Lyra screamed. Daniel turned, but too late. The hunter shoved the door wide, blade raised before he could strike. The alien mother swung the board with surprising force. Cracking it against the attacker's head, he stumbled, stunned, long enough for Daniel to fire and drop him to the ground. Daniel rushed back inside, his eyes blazing. "You shouldn't be standing." She met his gaze, her face pale but fierce. "And you shouldn't be fighting alone." For a heartbeat, silence hung heavy. Then the leader roared from outside, "Burn them out!" Daniel's stomach sank. Flames would end everything. He grabbed Lyra and pulled her close. "No matter what happens, don't let go of her hand," he told the girl, pointing at her mother. The hunters lit torches, their fire flickering like demons in the darkening woods. The battle wasn't over, it was only beginning. And as the smoke thickened, Daniel's eyes hardened. He whispered to himself, they want to fight. They'll get one. The hunters' torches lit the forest with a cruel glow. Flames danced in the dark, painting shadows across the trees. Smoke drifted toward the cabin, carrying the promise of death inside. Lyra clung to her mother's hand, her small body shaking. Her mother, though weak, pulled the girl close, whispering, "Stay strong, my little one." Daniel stood at the window, his jaw set. He counted the hunters, more than a dozen, too many for one man to face in open combat. But brute strength wasn't his way. If he was to win this, it would not be with muscle, but with cunning. The leader outside shouted, "Human! You cannot stop us, hand them over or we burn you all alive." Daniel glanced at the alien mother, her eyes wide with fear but also trust. He gave her a small nod as if to say, "I won't let it happen." He whispered to Lyra, "Stay with her, don't move until I come back." The girl's lips trembled. "But you'll be killed." Daniel crouched to meet her eyes. His voice was steady, firm. "I've survived worse. Trust me." He slipped outside through the back wall, moving silently into the trees. The hunters thought him trapped. But the forest was his weapon now. He set his plan in motion. First, he scattered small pouches of powder into the underbrush, each one filled with dried leaves mixed with a special earth ingredient. He struck a spark and suddenly the forest floor came alive with bursts of smoke. Thick and choking, the hunters coughed, their torches sputtering in the sudden haze. "Spread out," the leader barked. But confusion already gnawed at their ranks. From the cover of the smoke, Daniel moved like a shadow. He struck quickly, pulling one hunter's bowstring so it snapped, shoving another into a pit he had dug earlier. He never stayed in one place, always vanishing before they could strike back. The hunters began shouting, angry and afraid. "He's everywhere! Find him!" Daniel smiled grimly. "That's the point, back at the cabin." Lyra peeked through the cracks. Her eyes widened as she saw smoke swirl and shadows dart. Hunters stumbled, cursed. Some even fired arrows at empty air. She whispered to her mother, "He's winning." "He's making them afraid." The mother managed a faint smile, pride glimmering in her tired eyes. "Humans fight differently. They fight with their minds," Daniel kept pressing. He lured two hunters toward a clearing, where he had hung heavy branches overhead. With one sharp pull of a rope, the branches fell, crashing down and pinning them beneath. Their screams rang through the forest. Another hunter swung wildly at the smoke, only to find Daniel behind him. A quick strike with the butt of his weapon knocked him cold. The scarred leader grew furious. "Enough games! Burn the cabin now." But when his men rushed forward with torches, they found the ground slick with oil Daniel had poured earlier. Their torches ignited it instantly. Flames roared upward, not toward the cabin, but around them, encircling the hunters. The firelight twisted their faces with panic. They dropped their torches, shouting as the flames boxed them in. The leader's rage turned to alarm. "Fall back! Fall back!" Daniel stepped from the shadows, weapon raised. His voice was sharp, cutting through the chaos. "Leave now, or none of you leave at all." The hunters hesitated, torn between fear of him and loyalty to their leader. The leader snarled, "Cowards! He's only one man." He charged forward, drawing a curved blade. Daniel didn't retreat. He met the charge head-on, sidestepping at the last moment and slamming the butt of his weapon into the man's ribs. The leader stumbled, swinging wildly. Daniel caught the blade with his arm guard, sparks flying. Then he twisted sharply, wrenching the weapon free and sending the leader crashing to the ground. The remaining hunters froze, their courage breaking one by one. They fled into the smoke, leaving their leader behind. The scarred man lay groaning in the dirt. Daniel stood over him, weapon aimed. His finger tightened on the trigger. But then he stopped, his voice low, cold. "If you come again, you won't leave alive." He stepped back, letting the man crawl away into the forest. Beaten but alive enough to carry fear to the others, silence fell at last, only the crackle of dying flames remained. Daniel returned to the cabin. Smoke clinging to his clothes, Lyra ran to him, throwing her arms around his waist. "You came back, I knew you would." Daniel ruffled her hair gently, though his face remained serious. "They're gone, for now." The alien mother looked at him, her voice weak but steady. "You fought like no one I've ever seen. Not with strength, but with mind, you saved us again." Daniel sat by the fire, his body weary. He stared into the flames. This was only one battle. They'll return stronger. "We need to be ready." Lyra sat beside him, her small hand gripping his arm. Then we'll fight with you, she said firmly. Daniel glanced at the girl, then at her mother. For the first time in a long while, he didn't feel alone. The hunters would come again, but so would his determination, and as the fire burned bright, Daniel knew one truth: this wasn't just survival anymore. This was war of wits, and he was ready to play it until the end. The forest was quiet again, too quiet. The hunters had retreated, their leader humiliated. But Daniel knew it was only for now. He had seen enough wars to understand that defeated men nursed grudges, and grudges grew sharper than blades. Inside the cabin, the fire burned low, casting warm light on the alien mother as she lay resting. Her breathing had steadied, her fever easing under the herbs and Daniel's watchful care. Beside her, little Lyra clung to her mother's hand. Refusing to let go even in sleep, Daniel sat against the wall. His weapon across his lap, his body ached. His arms throbbed from blocking blades, and smoke still burned his lungs. Yet he didn't let his eyes close. Every creak of wood, every whisper of wind kept him alert. The alien mother stirred, her eyes opening slowly. She watched him silently for a long time before speaking. "You should rest." Her voice was soft but steady. Daniel looked at her, his expression calm but firm. "I'll rest when you and the girl are safe," she swallowed, her throat dry. "You've done more than enough already. Why risk your life for us? We're not your people." Daniel's gaze dropped to the flames. His jaw tightened. For a moment he didn't answer. Memories clawed at him, the faces of those he had lost, the cries of someone he had once failed to save. Finally he spoke, his voice low. "Because I couldn't save someone before. Someone I should have. Someone I loved. I swore I'd never watch it happen again." The mother's eyes softened, pain and gratitude mixing together. She pushed herself upright despite the wound, her hand trembling as she reached for him. Blood stained her fingers. She pressed them to her own chest, then slowly extended them toward him. Daniel frowned, confused. "Well, what are you doing?" Her voice was quiet but filled with weight. "Among my people, this is the oath in blood. It means we bind our lives together. If you protect us, we protect you. If you bleed for us, we bleed for you. It cannot be broken." Daniel hesitated. Staring at her bloodied hand, he had never believed in oaths, not since his world had betrayed him. But the way she looked at him, tired, wounded, yet determined, stirred something inside him. Slowly he drew a knife and nicked his palm, letting a single drop of blood fall into hers. She gasped softly as their blood touched and whispered words in her alien tongue, words that carried the sound of promise and fire. Lyra woke at the sound, her eyes widening. "Mama?" The mother pulled the girl close, her voice breaking. "He's one of us now." Daniel stared at the blood on his hand. The simple act that felt heavier than any chain. He had entered their fight as a stranger, but now he had bound himself to them. Willingly hours passed. The forest remained still. Yet Daniel felt the storm waiting on the horizon. He knew the hunters would not forgive humiliation. They would come back, and when they did, they would come with more numbers. More fury. He checked the traps again, strengthening them, preparing more smoke powders, sharpening stakes. Every motion was precise, but his mind kept returning to the oath. At dusk, Lyra brought him water, her small face serious. "Are we safe now?" she asked. Daniel knelt to her level, his tired eyes softening. "Not safe, not yet, but safer than before." She hesitated, then whispered, "I used to pray every night, asking someone to save us. I didn't think it would be you." Daniel's throat tightened. He placed a hand gently on her shoulder. Sometimes prayers are answered in unexpected ways. Behind them, her mother watched, her eyes glistening. She whispered so softly he almost didn't hear, "You're more than just a savior. You've given us hope." Night fell again. The fire burned bright in the cabin, casting its light against the darkness pressing in. The mother, though still weak, sat beside Daniel, Lyra curled between them. The small cabin felt less like a hiding place now and more like the beginning of something unspoken. The mother spoke once more, her voice quiet but clear. "If they take me again, promise me one thing." Daniel turned, his brow furrowed. "What?" "Take her," she whispered, nodding to Lyra. "Run, protect her." "Even if I cannot." Daniel's jaw clenched. His voice was rough but steady. "No, you're both coming with me. I don't leave family behind." The word family struck her like a spark. She lowered her eyes, emotion welling up. For so long, she had felt abandoned, discarded by those who should have protected her. Yet here was a human, bound to her by choice. not blood calling her family. The oath was more than words now. It was alive, beating between them, stronger than fear. Outside, far beyond the trees, a horn sounded long and deep. The hunters were gathering again, their fury carried on the wind. Daniel stood, his weapon in hand, his face hardened with resolve. He glanced at the mother and child. "Stay close tomorrow. We fight not just to survive, but to end this." The firelight reflected in his eyes. Fierce and unyielding, the oath in blood had been made. And now, for the first time in years, Daniel was ready not just to fight, but to belong. The horn echoed long into the night, a chilling sound that carried through the trees. It was not a call of warning, but a promise. The hunters were coming back, and this time, they meant to finish what they had started. Inside the cabin, the air was heavy with tension. The alien mother sat against the wall, her wound bandaged but aching, her face pale, yet her eyes glowed with quiet strength. Lyra curled beside her, clutching her mother's hand. Her little voice trembled. "Mama, will they find us again?" Daniel stood near the door, weapon ready. His shadow long in the firelight, he turned to her and said firmly, "Yes, they will, but this time they won't win." The mother lifted her gaze. Tired but steady. "There are too many. You can't fight them all alone." Daniel gave a thin smile. "That's the thing. I'm not alone anymore." He glanced at her, then at Lyra. The bond between them was no longer silent. It had weight, meaning dawn broke slowly, the first light spilling into the forest. Birds scattered at the sound of heavy footsteps. Dozens of hunters advanced, their armor dark, their faces twisted with vengeance. At their head, the scarred leader marched. Rage burning in his eyes, he shouted to his men, "Tear the cabin apart. Leave no one breathing." From inside, Lyra gasped. But Daniel knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Do you trust me?" She nodded quickly, though her eyes filled with fear. "Then stay with your mother, no matter what happens. Don't let go of her." Daniel rose, pushing open the cabin door. He stepped outside into the cold dawn, facing the wall of hunters. His heart was steady, his mind sharp. This was not just about survival anymore. This was about ending it. The scarred leader sneered, "Still standing, human? I'll enjoy breaking you." Daniel didn't answer with words. He raised his weapon, fired once, the shot echoed, and one hunter fell. The silence that followed was broken by a roar as the rest surged forward. But Daniel had prepared. The forest was his ally now. His traps, his cunning, his earthborn tricks turned every step into danger. Hunters tripped wires that sent logs swinging. Smoke bombs burst, blinding and choking them. Hidden pits swallowed their legs, turning their charge into chaos. The mother watched from the cabin. Awe in her eyes, she whispered, "He's one man. And yet he fights like an army." Lyra pressed her face into her mother's chest. But her small voice whispered, "He's not alone, Mama. He has us." The scarred leader cut through the confusion, his blade flashing as he bellowed, "Fight! Kill him!" He charged at Daniel, their weapons clashing with sparks. Steel against steel, strength against wit. Daniel's arms burned with the effort. But his focus never wavered. The duel raged in the clearing. Hunters tried to circle, but the traps kept them back. Daniel fought not just with skill, but with strategy. Each strike deliberate, each step planned, at last. With a sharp twist, he disarmed the leader, driving him to his knees. The man snarled, hatred burning, "Do it, kill me!" Daniel stood over him, weapon raised, but his voice was calm. "No, death is too easy for you. You'll live with this shame, and you'll carry a warning to the rest, never hunt them again." The leader's eyes widened, fury mixing with fear. He scrambled back, his remaining hunters retreating with him. Their shouts faded as they vanished into the forest. Beaten, silence fell, broken only by the crackle of distant fire. Daniel lowered his weapon, his chest heaving. He turned back to the cabin. Lyra burst from the doorway, running to him. She threw her arms around his waist, crying, "You came back. You really came back." Daniel knelt, pulling her close. "I told you. I don't leave family behind." The alien mother stood at the door, leaning on the frame for support. Her eyes met his, filled with gratitude deeper than words. Slowly, she stepped forward, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You've given us life when we had nothing. You've given us safety when we had none. You've given us hope. For that, I give you my trust, my loyalty, and my home." Daniel looked at her, the weight of her words settling in. He had spent years wandering, never belonging, but here, in this moment, he felt something he had long thought lost, a place, a bond, a reason. The three of them stood together in the pale morning light. The forest quiet once more. Though danger still lingered in the world, something new had been born in that cabin, a promise, sealed not by blood alone, but by choice. As the sun rose higher, Daniel whispered softly, almost to himself, "A new dawn." The mother heard him and nodded. The dawn of a new bond, and with that, the human, the alien mother, and her daughter stepped forward into a future unknown but shared, not as strangers, not as savior and saved, but as something stronger, family.